So actually, the best way for him to play was h6. Another concession, but at the same time, this prepares a very important regrouping of the pieces. So king can go to h7 now, after which queen won't be pinned to protecting dark squares on the king side. So this can help black to make the queen more active. So for example, after h4, again, black just ignores the second rank, but plays rook to c5, protecting the bishop. Because as you can see, white has a plan of completely exposing black's position. For example, it happens after rook c2 move. So here white has a great sacrifice. Rook takes d5, e d5, now rook to d1, and after queen c5, natural defense of the d file, white continues with the h file. And white's attack is extremely dangerous here. It is also possible, for example, to change the move order, I guess, to start here with the h5 and then rook to d1. So all this looks really dangerous. But white still has to be careful. For example, if white takes on h6 here, then of course queen f2. But, well, it's nonsense for a player like Kramnik, so h5, of course, the best choice. So instead of allowing that, black should play the rook to c5. And here appears that white's direct attack on the king side doesn't work very well. For instance, rook to d3, rook to c8, another rook to d1, king to h7, king to h2, probably preparing something, queen goes to f7, and it's not so easy to find a spot. It's not so easy to find a target here because, well, if h5 then g5 and position is closed. It's not easy to attack g6 here because black has enough resources to protect it. So this position is probably even not better for white. So instead, Kramnik, during the post-mortem analysis, understood that the best way to play is rook to c1. Counterintuitive decision, just to simplify position a bit, but to get rid of black's potentially active rooks. So rook c8, for example, takes, another rook goes to c1, king to h7 to protect h6 and to free the queen finally. And then after this exchanges, queen goes to d2. Despite at first glance position looks deadly drawish, white still has a chance to try to play for a win because black's king is still vulnerable. Black's bishop d5 is pinned to d5 square because if it goes away somewhere, queen can invade through d7 or d8 with checkmating threats and probably decisive attack. Still not so easy for white to find a winning plan. Maybe it makes sense to try to do something with pawns on the king, on the queen side, to try to find a spot there. But as you can see, black's position is very solid here, and well, it was the best chance. Which actually means even if you play your best chess, right? If you're, well, let's say if you're a Kramnik, right? A player like Kramnik, one of the best players ever, and you play your best, you manage to surprise your opponent in the opening, so you have a psychological advantage. Then you choose great moves, so you improve your position, and so on, so on, so on. So when you make your best to win the game, sometimes it's not possible to get the desired result. So if your opponent also plays good, well, probably it will be a draw. So you have to be ready for it. But it's obvious, of course. So like Kramnik says, chess is actually a drawn game. So never mind. In the game, Topalov came with the very active but surprisingly wrong rook c2, and after which Kramnik started his great attack. So h4, rook to c8, h5, and well, black has no normal counterplay here. So the problem is that it's no longer possible to play h6, g5 to close the position, so position will be opened in the nearest future. So queen goes to e8 to control g6 square probably, and now rook simply goes to d3, literally forcing black's next reply, because white's threat is very simple, just to take on g6, and after h7 takes g6, rook goes to h3, the checkmate in several moves. So rook goes to c3 to control the third rank. Now another rook goes to d1, and it is already very hard for black to find a good move, because white is about to sacrifice on d5, which will be another interesting pattern that we'll discuss a bit later. There is no active counterplay anymore, so g6 is under pressure, and queen h6 is in the air, followed by several moves like rook d5 and maybe at some point e6 or something like that. So white is ready to attack. Black has no enough defensive resources here. So in a game he took on h5 with the idea to have g6 square for the queen to try to counterattack maybe, but this counterattack never happened, because now Kramnik takes on d5. That is another pattern that he recognized. It was actually very simple for him, but anyway, exchange sacrifice that leads to completely damaged pawn structure and completely exposed king. So here black has no chances to survive, actually. But Kramnik says, as strong as it is natural, I had no great doubts about this move, but I exerted myself and checked the variations thoroughly. So even in such a position, a player of Kramnik's level still calculates all important variations accurately and deeply. That's the point. So you have to calculate every time if you want to play good chess. So chess is generally is all about proper calculation. So it only seems like, well, positional understanding prevails and so on, so on, so on. Yeah, no questions. It's very important to understand chess, to have a good understanding of the strategy and so on, so on, so on. But anyway, on the high level, calculation what decides the game usually. So a proper calculation. Okay, let's see what happened next. After this capture on d5, Kramnik just played e6. Very good move. Now pawn is dangerous itself, but what is more important is that it pawns controls f7, making king extremely vulnerable here. And this also, as you can see, opens diagonal. So now that bishop works both ways, controlling squares around the king and also attacking the rook. So the easiest outcome could be, for example, queen g6. Not actually queen g6. Let's start with the queen e6. Yeah, that's easier to understand. So after queen e6, white just continues with the queen g5 check, king f7, queen goes to g7, and after king goes away, bishop simply takes on c3. So as you can see, bishop is protected by the queen. So white wins material and actually wins the game. Another possibility after e6 is to try queen to g6 move, preventing queen g5. But in this case, white simply captures the rook. After rook takes, queen jumps to b8 with check, exploiting the weakened back rank. And after king g7, just e7, and promotes. So black has no chances to stop the pawn. And finally, if rook from c3 goes to c6, preparing rook takes e6, now with the idea of defense over 6th rank, so to connect the rook through the 6th rank. White has this rook d3 chance, rook takes e6, rook goes to g3, check, and after king f7, white has very, very nice move that was also predicted by Kramnik while calculating variations. So queen goes to h6. Simply continuing the attack, and the best option for black is to capture the bishop, but then after queen g7 check, king e6 and rook e3, king is forced to d6, and white captures first the rook on f6 with check, then captures the queen and captures everything that is possible to capture. So white simply wins here. Which means after e6, the only normal resource for black is just rook from c3 to c7, at least trying to cover the 7th rank. And now rook takes on d5. capturing the pawn. So actually white starts collecting pawns, at the same time getting closer to black's king. So very natural strategy, very natural way to play. It is a nice position in the sense of possible tactical outcomes. For example, if queen goes to g6 here, as I said before, e6 is a great pawn just controlling f7. So as you can see, black's king is completely limited. So if queen goes to g6, queen takes c7 here. So as you can see, if rook takes, well, rook jumps to d8 with the checkmate. And the same happens if, for example, black makes this check on c1, king goes to h2, and after queen to g6, queen again takes the rook, but now on c1 with the same outcome. So rook goes to d8. So looks nice, at least. After rook takes d5, Topalov took on e6, which looks like the most normal move, just to get rid of this extremely nasty pawn on e6 and to attack the bishop. But still, it is not enough to save the game. So queen g5, natural continuation, and the problem with that, once the king goes to the f file, rook just takes on f5, continuing this great attack, and black has no chance to survive. So let's see. In the game, Topalov played king to f8. It was also possible to play king f7. In this case, rook takes f5, and now there is a chance to play rook c5, just bothering the rook, so preventing probably the discovery check of the bishop. Instead, white can just take on h5, grabbing one more pawn. King goes to f8, and now bishop to e5 anyway. So check, king goes to e7, now queen takes h7. At the moment, white already has more than enough material compensation for the exchange, but of course it doesn't matter. After king e8, rook goes to g5. What matters here is that white has great threats to black's king. So rook g5 creating a direct threat of rook g8. The only chance is to take on e5, and then queen checks from h5, attacking the king and the rook at the same time. So finally, white will have a simply winning position with two extra pawns and continuing attack against the king. So more than enough to win. After queen g5, Topalov played king to f8, and here Kramnik also took on f7, very natural continuation of the attack. So now, in addition to those threats, like in the previous line, white has a chance to check the king with the bishop from e7 and g7, so there is also additional threat of the double check. In the game, Topalov decided to play rook to f7, covering the f file. It was also possible to try the same rook c5, but here white's win is even easier than in the previous line. So bishop goes to e7 check, it is a double check. King goes to e8, and well, two options. The first is to play bishop to c5, rook takes c5, queen takes h5 first with check, then taking the rook, and this should be an easy win. For example, queen h7, queen a7 is possible, but then it might be dangerous in the view of potential perpetual, so probably it's better just to take on c5, also having two extra pawns, and not a big problem to convert the advantage, so this is protected. If queen goes to e1, for instance, king goes to h2, black has no further checks with queen, so this means white can continue with collecting pawns or starting promoting his pawns to queen. So that was one possibility. After king e8, it was also possible to play rook f8 first, and after king d7 to take on c5 here. So that is also a winning position, despite, surprisingly, we have a material balance if black takes on c5, but the power of pieces is way too different. Moreover, after rook takes c5, it's possible to continue with, for example, queen d8, and after king c6, rook f6, just winning the game immediately. So two options, position is lost for black. So after rook f5, he played to f7 with the rook. Queen goes to h6, continuing the attack and forcing the king to the e file. King goes to the e file, and now rook goes to the e file again, just continuing the attack and now winning the queen. Rook c6, the last chance. The point here is that if white takes on e6, then after rook e6, as you can see, bishop is pinned, and one of a sudden position is not that clear. So maybe even black will have some winning chances. Who knows? Two rooks are very good against the queen usually when they work together and when there are some concrete targets to attack. But after rook c6, Kramnik came up with a very nice solution of this problem. He simply took an h5 with the queen, and appears that everything is pinned all around. So first of all, he went away from this 6th rank, so bishop f6 is no longer in danger, so white is ready to take on e6. And at the same time, this bishop is invulnerable since rook f7 is pinned, and queen on e6 is also pinned. So here Topalov resigned. What a nice game, right? So Kramnik did everything to win, and he deserved this win because, first of all, he had a much better opening preparation, so he managed to surprise his opponent. He managed to make Topalov be nervous and choosing not very well order of moves in the opening, which allowed Kramnik to achieve a good middle game position that he was aware of and performed in a quite interesting way. Then he came up with some sort of great calculation work, just calculating deeply and evaluating all the final positions just correctly, which is very important. And also he did everything to exert pressure. So he predicted opponents' defensive resources. He just tried to choose probably the most promising continuations and so on. So he deserved this win. But anyways, you can see sometimes it's possible, even in such a situation, it's possible not to win the game and to make a draw. So instead of rook c2, the best move was h6. But I can imagine that to this moment of game, Topalov already had a time trouble and was exhausted, probably solving really unpleasant problems during all the game, starting from the very opening. That's why there is no surprise that he made a mistake. But again, it was very hard to believe that rook c2 could be a mistake. So proper calculation decides. Sometimes the moves that look great, in fact, appear not that great, at least, and only a proper calculation can prove it, because the mistake was discovered here when, after rook a1, black had no normal defense against rook d5 idea, exposing the king completely and continuing with the attack. So, as we can see, Kramnik's success in this game was mainly based on the following. So the first, deep and accurate calculation. And second, correct evaluation of the position based on the pattern recognition. So now let us just summarize everything and come up with some further tips on improvement. So we will start with tips on correct evaluation of position. So first of all, you have to learn chess. That sounds really obvious, but believe me, you have to learn chess just badly, okay? So learn chess in general. So it doesn't matter whether it relates to your opening repertoire or not. The more you learn, the more patterns you memorize. So the more chances you have to recognize them during the game. It means that you have to follow, for example, analysis of grandmasters. So one of the best ways to improve is to follow thorough analysis of the game played by a top player. For example, Kramnik played the game against Topalov and he thoroughly analyzed it and commented for New in Chess magazine. That was, by the way, my main source for this show. So follow those analyses. You will see how top players think. You will understand how they make decisions, how they calculate, how they evaluate positions, and so on. One of possible ways to improve. But the main idea is to learn chess in general. The more you know, the better. The more patterns you memorize. Second tip for today is play and analyze. Actually, your games is one of the greatest source for improvement. So after every played game, just identify where you made a wrong evaluation, for example, and don't be lazy to find out why. Believe me, on the club players level, there is a great room for improvement on this direction. So you don't have to be lazy with analyzing your games. Just analyze them and try to identify moments when you made a wrong evaluation, when you made a mistake, and try to understand why you made it. Only when you understand why you made a wrong evaluation, why you made a mistake, you can fix it and come up with some progress. So what's your main goal on this way with improvement of the correct evaluation? So your main goal is to build up a general understanding of chess and to memorize as many patterns as you can and recognize them when playing a game. So rather obvious, however, well, today we come up only with tips. Tricks will come next shows. Okay, and finally, to the most interesting part, and maybe one of the most complicated parts, so calculation and decision making. The first tip, build up an algorithm. So it sounds a bit complicated probably, but a proper calculation takes time. So when you play a real game, you're usually under time pressure. So you don't have infinite time to make a decision. So every decision is limited by time. You have to be quite fast since, for example, modern time controls become faster and faster day after day. So a proper calculation takes time, since that you need an algorithm that makes your decision making efficient, which also means fast. So you have to calculate dip, you have to calculate accurately, and at the same time you have to be fast. Otherwise you will end up in a time trouble. And believe me, I'm a great expert in getting to a time trouble. Well, I used to be. I used to be. But anyway, it is a big problem usually because you can play a great game, but then in a time trouble you just waste everything. You just spoil everything, and you can even lose simply winning position. So you have to be a good calculator of variations, which means you have to be not only deep and accurate, but also you have to be fast. The next tip is train. Also a very obvious tip. So there is no magic solution that could make you a great calculating machine like Houdini or, for example, Komodo, or even like Rybka. So there is no magic solution. You have to train your calculation skills and develop your algorithm. So actually, there is a basic algorithm that is pretty well known probably. And by the way, I will present this basic algorithm next show in 1 week. However, your final goal is to come up with your own algorithm. So exactly the algorithm that suits you the best. So you have to analyze it. So there is a great portion of self-analysis usually. Also after played games, for example, when you made a mistake in the calculation, you have to understand where you made a mistake and why you made that mistake. So what was wrong with your calculation algorithm to come up with some improvement on that way. And finally, what is your main goal on this way is to come up with the skills of accurate, deep, yet fast calculation. That is also clear. And well, if you will do that, you will see that your play and your results become better and better and better.